Hello everybody, this is Paige and I'm one of the designers at Mosaic Moments, and I want to welcome you to the Designing Mosaics series. This is actually part 2, so if you haven't already, go check out our part 1 video that's all about balance, which is a very important principle for making Mosaic Moments layouts. And what's great about the Designing Mosaics series for you guys is you kind of get to see the thoughts behind why we create the pages the way we do, and hopefully understand that nothing is placed randomly, and a lot of the things we choose to place on our page and the layout design is all intentional. So I hope you guys learn a lot from this series and kind of understand our thoughts as to why we design the layouts the way we do and why we choose certain elements the way we do. So again, hopefully you'll learn a lot from watching these. So today's video is all about rhythm, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard that term for music, but it actually is an element in art as well. So rhythm is a repeated pattern of organized movement, which our pages definitely have organized movement. And movement or rhythm is really important on Mosaic Moments layout because it helps your eye move around the page, and it also can help the page feel more organized, which the eye tends to like organization more than chaos. So I gathered some layout examples to show you guys how we achieved rhythm, and hopefully you will learn to do the same on your layouts. When trying to achieve rhythm, one thing to keep in mind is the photographs you choose to add on your layout. So on this top portion here, I made this beautiful mosaic look with these white floral photographs. And this was actually more than one photograph. This was at least 2 or 3 of them, and I blended them together to kind of look like one photograph. But if you look at the flowers, you notice they're all kind of going in the same direction, and the white flowers are repeating over and over again. And that is how the rhythm is achieved on this mosaic section, is that the elements are repeating over and over. And by elements, I mean the color and the shape. The flowers are all kind of a similar shape, right? And the direction the flowers are going are all kind of flowing by the page, and that moves your eye across that portion of the layout, and it's very nice. Now this layout has a very simple rhythm, and you probably can see it has a white square, then a photo, a white square, then a photo. Can you see the beat here? White square, photo, over and over and over again. That's a nice beat. If you notice, the photos don't feel very random. The journaling blocks don't feel random either. They make a nice beat, and this 2x2 checkerboard look is a very easy way to achieve rhythm on your layout. So rhythm is a very important principle if you're planning to add any embellishment such as dies or pattern paper to your layout, because you can easily make it so it feels random on the layout or disorganized. So giving these special embellishments and organized movement helps the eye move around the page again, and also helps it to have balance, as we talked about in our last video. So here you can kind of see the rhythm is the 1x2 pattern paper block followed by the 2x2 die, and it repeats along the edges of the layout here. And it actually is a little fun beat. It's like paper, die, right? Just because elements repeat on a layout doesn't mean it has to be boring, but you still need to make sure there's some repetition. So on this layout, you see I have 4 of the 3x3 circle centered dies, and they're rotating around the layout, but 2 of them have the blue paper and the other 2 have a red polka dot paper. So what's fun about this is the die shape is repeating, but the colors are different on every other one. But the colors need to also make sure it's on a beat. So here it's blue, red, blue, red, blue, red over and over again, right? If you circled around the layout, you would see it has that nice repetition. So again, repetition, there needs to be similar element, but they don't have to look exactly the same every time. All right, here I have this really fun asymmetrical layout, and if you look at it, you'll notice that there are elements that repeat on the layout, and that's color. But I also want to point out these three sections here. Each section, there's a bar of, or really a strip of the flowers that was made with a stamp, and then below them are these pink 1 by 1 inch squares. They repeat a few times on the page, and that helps move your eye around the layout, and it feels organized. Here I changed things up a little. Now that part on the very bottom of the page, the bar is at the bottom. Now that's not a big change, but it's a small change, and it kind of ruins the repetition from the far left here. And now on the far right of the layout, you have all pink squares. And actually, because it's all pink squares, your eye just goes to that part of the layout and it loses its flow. So I have the two layouts right next to each other now, and you can see on my eye keeps wanting to go to the page on the left because I think my eye is more comfortable with that one because those elements are repeating on the page over and over again. My eye seems to like that part of the layout. But on the right side, I feel like all I'm looking at is the 1 by 1 inch pink squares. It's so distracting, and I feel like your eye doesn't really care to move to the other side anymore. So that's why repetition is important. Even if you're doing freestyle or an asymmetrical kind of layout, you need something in there that's repeating over and over to move your eye around. So on this layout, rhythm is achieved through the two sections that have strips, and also right next to them is the three little 1 inch squares with the metal accents. That's also another, again, if you're using embellishments, what's really nice is having those three repeat on both sides of the layout to draw your eye. But the strip sections, if you look at the top right, the reason why I did a strip and made a larger block and two other strips is because I didn't want to cut the bride in half. That would have made her look terrible or awkward. So I kept her body in that section, but it still flows very nicely, and I wanted to keep that nice flow, so I also added the same technique on the bottom left here. In a perfect world, I would have liked if I had a 1 inch strip and then a bigger block and then two other strips, right? But I didn't have a photo where she could fit that way, but I still used the same technique, and it does have a nice rhythm using these strips on the top and bottom of the layout. All right, here I kept the strips on the top, but on the bottom it's one solid photograph. And the thing about having the strips only at the top here is that's the only thing, right? It feels kind of random, and it also takes away from the focal point. The focal point is that center photograph of the bride really close up. So I kind of feel like my eye keeps going to that strip section, and everything else, again, doesn't really matter. So again, that's why you need that movement going through the layout to make sure your eye moves around it. All right, here are the two layouts right next to each other again. On the left, you can see because that strips technique is repeated, the layout has a nice flow and your eye wants to move around it. Whereas on the layout on the right, I only have the strips in the one section, and it kind of makes the bottom section seem kind of boring, like you don't really want to look at it. It doesn't have as nice of a flow. So if you're using a technique, make sure it's balanced on your layout and repeat it if your eye's not moving around the layout. This layout has a nice rhythm because there's this Canterbury die, and you see it repeated 3 times on the layout. It uses the same colors, it's going in the same direction. And if you look on the left and right sides, there's the blue blocks with the journaling and the Canterbury dies below, and you can see how that's repeated. And you can look outside the focal point, which is the 4x5 photo in the center here and the Canterbury die on top. Everything else is repeated, so you definitely want to make sure you repeat your colors and, again, all your embellishments to create movement on your layout. All right, so this is an example of when a layout has lost its rhythm. First of all, I added in a 3x3 X Factor frame die on the top right, and it feels sort of random. it doesn't flow with anything on the layout. There's nothing to really go with it. And on the right side, you also have that blue journaling block. And again, there's nothing to really help it flow along the layout here. And the Canterbury dies, what was nice before was they were all going that horizontal direction. And now there's a few of them that are going vertical. And it kind of loses its flow or rhythm. All right, if you look on the left side again, you can see that rhythm with the Canterbury dies. It's going do, 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 with they're all going the horizontal direction. They have a nice flow, and the blue journaling block repeats. Whereas the other side, the right layout kind of looks like a mess. There kind of really is not a very good rhythm going on here. And so that's why it's important to have rhythm, because you feel like it has a nice flow. It looks good to your eyes. Whereas a layout where the rhythm's kind of like chaotic, kind of the eye doesn't really like that very much. So be sure to add rhythm when you're adding in embellishments and dies for sure. All right, this layout has a radial design, which looks very nice, and the point the way die is repeated in place in kind of similar places around the layout. And you can also see the arrow part of the die cut is going this clockwise direction around the layout, which gives it a very nice rhythm or flow. So here I made a few changes on the top right. That section doesn't have the point the way die. On the bottom left, it's a completely different die, and plus I added in the 2x3 X Factor die on the right over here, and that flow that was there before is now gone. Now it feels sort of like you look at the top left and circle around, it kind of stops. I feel like that's what happens if there's not rhythm, is your eye just kind of wants to stop, and it doesn't want to keep flowing or moving around the layout. So again, that's why it's important to keep the similar elements around the layout, and they're all going in a very nice direction to help your eye move around. All right, here you can see the difference. Like I said, on the left layout here, it has a very nice flow. The dies are going in the same direction, the clockwise direction. On the right layout over here, you're kind of like, I don't know what's going on, right? There's kind of a lot going on, and that makes your eye not even move around quite as smoothly. It feels like it has to go through these random hoops, right, to get around the whole layout. All right, so I wanted to show you some mosaic layouts today, and of course it's always important to keep that movement on a mosaic layout, even though it may be all photographs. So here, what's repeating is the type of photographs. There's all these birds, they're in the distance, there's this tall grass growing, and there's some water. And the elements from the photographs are repeating. Now, on this layout that I just changed over to, the birds... Yeah, there's birds on these two photographs, but they're both kind of placed on the page randomly. On the top, there's this 2x3 block. On the bottom is a 2x2 block, which there are other 2x2 blocks from the horses on this layout, but the one with the birds feels random. Feels like it doesn't really belong there. And the same thing on the top, the 2x3 block, which is a very nice photograph, kind of doesn't feel like it goes with everything else. So remember, when you're choosing photos, to have rhythm by making sure they have similar elements such as the subject, the lighting. Again, here, what was nice about the first layout was it had all the tall grass and the water, and here it's a very different photograph placed in those sections, which makes it lose its rhythm. All right, so here rhythm was added to this layout with the mosaics. So on the very top portion, there's two different photos of wedding cookies. And you can, even though they're two different photos, the cookies are all going in that same direction. They're kind of going diagonally to the right. And that helps give you a nice rhythm or flow to your layout. Since that's repeating, it feels good to the eye and it moves along the layout. And if you look in the middle mosaic section, the cookies are going in the same direction as well. They're not going diagonally, they're going vertically, but they're all going vertically, and that gives a nice rhythm along that center portion of the layout. Here I changed things up a little bit on the top portion. Now the one photograph is flowing in the opposite direction. So the left and right, they're kind of like in a fight with each other, right? They're not flowing anymore. It's like, which way is my eye supposed to go? And your eye kind of stays up there because it's not flowing across it anymore. And then in the middle here on the left side are the small cookies that are a little bit farther away. And then the right side is this really close up cookie. And they're both cut in the mosaic way, but the cookie on the right, it's taking away all the attention. It's like you have this nice flow on the left of the small cookies, and then on the right side, it's wham in your face, one big cookie. I think that photo would be appropriate for the focal point, but instead it's taking away from the focal point because it's so distracting. And again, it lost its flow from the other side. And here are the layouts side by side. Again, I really like the one on the left because the cookies on the top are going in the same direction, which gives a nice rhythm. And in the middle has a nice rhythm because the cookies are going the same directions. Whereas on the right, the top portion kind of feels like it's battling because it's going one way and then the other. And in the bottom, the polka dot cookie kind of takes the attention away from everything else because there's really nothing to match it on the other side. So this is the last layout of the video. I wanted to put out another mosaic. So this mosaic has no matting, no embellishments, but it's still important to keep that rhythm. And here rhythm was achieved by repeating this yellow tree over and over again. And for one thing, it's a really pretty tree, right? But because that color and the trees are repeating, it gives this page a nice rhythm or flow. Your eye wants to go around the layout and yellow is particularly a very bright color. And so you definitely want that to be flowing and balanced on your page when you use that kind of color. So that's what makes this page look really nice, is that repeating photograph. And here was a few different photographs, but one tip, if you forget to take multiple photographs of something like a tree, is you can always print it multiple times. You can usually flip it or mirror it in a photo program. So if you need to, you can always just print out the same photograph multiple times to make sure you get this repetition or rhythm on your scrapbook layout. All right, we have reached the end of today's video. If any of you have any questions about the design principle rhythm, please ask them in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video so you can come back to it over and over again whenever you're working on your scrapbook layouts. Maybe you need a refresher and want to make sure you apply these design principles to your pages. And don't forget to subscribe. More of these videos are definitely coming, so you definitely want to subscribe to make sure that you're updated on all of these design principles videos. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning about rhythm today, and I'll see you next time.